Kang Yoon is a cop who lives large. Designer clothes, luxury cars, a sprawling villa, Gucci ties, tailored suits, and polished leather shoes are his everyday uniform. He's a player in both the underworld and the legitimate world, operating in the gray areas of the law, using violence to combat violence, evil to fight evil, a philosophy he embodies throughout the film. The movie opens with rookie cop Min Jae shadowing a senior officer on a drug bust. As the suspect scrambles up a building's exterior piping, desperate to escape, the veteran cop dislodges him with a well-aimed rock. This blatant disregard for protocol shocks Min Jae, but it's undeniably effective. The drug dealer, now within reach, frantically produces the hidden narcotics. Under duress and some brutal interrogation tactics, the suspect confesses. However, in court, he flips the script, accusing the officer of police brutality. To corroborate the dealer's claims, the defense attorney calls Min Jae to the stand. Bound by his duty, the rookie testifies truthfully, recounting the events exactly as they happened. This perceived betrayal deeply offends the seasoned officer. Despite his superior's attempts to intervene, the veteran cop's fury simmers. He confronts Min Jae, frustrated by the rookie's rigid adherence to the rules. "You think you're the only righteous one, don't you?" Ironically, Min Jae's unwavering moral compass catches the attention of In Ho, the head of internal affairs. He tasks Min Jae with an undercover investigation, targeting none other than Kang Yoon, the decorated captain operating in the shadowy intersection of law enforcement and the criminal underworld. Kang Yoon is a rising star in the police department, seemingly untouchable and enjoying the favor of high-ranking officials. Initially, Min Jae balks at the assignment, feeling like a small fish going after a shark. But In Ho reveals a sealed case file. 3 years prior, Kang Yoon single-handedly cracked a major drug manufacturing case. The investigation, however, racked up hundreds of millions of won in expenses, raising suspicions of bribery and protection rackets involving powerful figures. Adding to the intrigue, even Officer Lee, the investigator assigned to look into Kang Yoon's methods, ended up dead under mysterious circumstances. Now all signs point to Kang Yoon. With his back against the wall, In Ho turns to Min Jae, an untainted rookie with no allegiances. But In Ho's choice isn't random. Min Jae comes from a long line of police officers, and law enforcement is in his blood. However, a shadow hangs over Min Jae's family history. His father, also a cop, died under questionable circumstances during an arrest. His death officially labeled a line-of-duty incident, but the details remain murky. Min Jae's decision to join the force was partly driven by a desire to uncover the truth behind his father's death. In Ho, ever the strategist, knows this. To access classified documents related to his father's case, Min Jae has little choice but to accept In Ho's dangerous proposition. When he was 8 years old, Min Jae's father bravely risked his life to save a hostage. The only memento his father left him was the whistle he always carried. The next day, In Ho informs Min Jae that Kang Yoon's current thorn in the side is the wealthy playboy Young Bin, who is about to be released from prison. Young Bin, accustomed to a life of luxury and extravagant spending, orchestrates large-scale drug operations for the thrill of it. He constantly pushes the boundaries of the law, but his connections and influence protect him, allowing him to quickly post bail after each short stint behind bars. Fed up, Kang Yoon partners with the notorious gang leader, Kim Tae, to put Young Bin away for good. Kim Tae, looking to expand his operations into Japan, is more than happy to eliminate the troublesome Young Bin. Min Jae's task is to closely monitor both Kang Yoon and Kim Tae, gathering evidence of Kang Yoon's illicit dealings and bribery. Just then, a customs officer who had previously aided Young Bin's drug trafficking escapes police custody and turns up dead in a public bathroom. This fuels further resentment towards Kang Yoon within the police force. To prevent escalating internal conflict, Kang Yoon's superiors pressure him to resolve the situation quickly. Whether it's Young Bin or any of his copycats, catch the perpetrators. Understand? You have 10 days. This presents a golden opportunity for In Ho, who promptly embeds Min Jae within Kang Yoon's investigative team. Min Jae's initiation isn't exactly smooth. The seasoned team members play a prank on the rookie, sending him to handcuff a seemingly sleeping thug. Min Jae quickly finds himself on the receiving end of the cuffs, chained to a chair. Turns out the thug is an undercover officer. His release comes with a price, a humiliating dance performance. To fit in, Min Jae reluctantly complies, his stiff, awkward movements eliciting raucous laughter from the team. The hazing ends only when Kang Yoon arrives. Surprisingly, this is the first time Kang Yoon and Min Jae meet face to face. Kang Yoon immediately brings Min Jae along on an investigation, even gifting him an expensive jacket. It turns out Kang Yoon and Min Jae's father were acquainted. "I knew your father," Kang Yoon reveals, leaving Min Jae to wonder about the nature of their relationship. They visit the storefront of a known drug dealer. Unable to contain himself, Min Jae begins searching the premises. He quickly uncovers a stash of fake IDs and notices track marks on the dealer's arm. As Min Jae moves to arrest the dealer, Kang Yoon intervenes, physically pushing him aside. Min Jae is bewildered but determined to stay close to Kang Yoon. He suppresses his frustration and leaves. Later, to avoid jail time, the dealer divulges crucial information about Young Bin. "I heard he paid a fortune for some new tech patent, enough to deal with major league players." Kang Yoon deduces that Young Bin will be looking to raise capital. Min Jae, however, remains uneasy about Kang Yoon's methods, focusing on the bigger picture while seemingly overlooking smaller offenses. To Min Jae, everything is black and white. No criminal should be spared. Kang Yoon, however, remains enigmatic, telling him to wait and see. After their investigation, the team invites Min Jae for drinks. Looking at the towering stack of soju glasses, a traditional Korean drinking ritual, Min Jae feels apprehensive. Clearly, this is a rite of passage for new team members. Just as he steels himself for the ordeal, Kang Yoon steps in, pouring several glasses of soju into an ice bucket and taking the brunt of the drinking himself, sparing Min Jae the ordeal. Though touched by the gesture, Min Jae remains focused on his mission, meticulously documenting everything he's observed and collected that day on his computer. Kang Yoon's seemingly deliberate disregard for the drug dealer's drug use raises red flags for Min Jae, suspecting it was a calculated move to gain leverage and information on Young Bin. He meticulously photographs Kang Yoon's expensive car and villa, further fueling his suspicions. Leaving nothing to chance, Min Jae even plants a tracking device on Kang Yoon's vehicle. Cross-referencing information, Min Jae confirms that Kang Yoon was indeed the one meeting with Dong Cheol, the drug dealer. His resolve to investigate Kang Yoon deepens. Kang Yoon, seemingly oblivious to Min Jae's suspicion, shows remarkable trust in the rookie, giving him the code to his home and allowing him to choose a tie from his personal wardrobe. Min Jae seizes this opportunity, photographing the luxury items that seem incongruous with Kang Yoon's police salary. While Kang Yoon is occupied in the bathroom, Min Jae compares the shoes Kang Yoon wore to his meeting with Kim Tae, the gang leader. Using a card skimming technique, he gains access to Kang Yoon's office, photographing an entire wall covered with information about Kang Yoon. Finally, after photographing the model of Kang Yoon's safe, he slips back into the dressing room, feigning adjustments to his tie. This clandestine evidence gathering is fraught with tension, but Kang Yoon remains unsuspecting. Later, Min Jae questions Kang Yoon's methods. "Why dress up in a suit and tie when dealing with criminals?" Kang Yoon explains, "They build walls of money to keep us out. Without a warrant, we can't touch them." Min Jae struggles to grasp the complexities of Kang Yoon's approach. He knows only that Kang Yoon's finances are questionable, convinced someone is bankrolling his operations. Witnessing Kang Yoon slip a hefty sum to a mechanic for information that easily leads him to Young Bin's license plate number solidifies Min Jae's suspicions. Piecing together the evidence, Min Jae forms a theory about Officer Lee's death. The power behind Kang Yoon is likely involved. A few days later, using the tracking device, Min Jae pinpoints a meeting between Kang Yoon and a mysterious contact at an upscale restaurant. Too far to eavesdrop, he enlists a waiter to plant a listening device on their table. Through his earpiece, Min Jae hears Kang Yoon propose an investment in Young Bin's venture. The contact reassures Kang Yoon not to worry about the money, framing it as funding for his good work. "I'll persuade my superiors to approve the funds soon," the contact promises. As expected, Kang Yoon's funding came from what's known as sponsorship from higher-ups. And shockingly, it turned out that Chief Song, the head of Intelligence Unit 2, was Kang Yoon's contact. Min Jae was wrestling with the implications of their relationship and the organization behind Kang Yoon when Kang Yoon invited him to meet at a nightclub frequented by Young Bin. Before heading out, Kang Yoon took out a loan from a shady loan shark. Money, he explained, was an entry fee to gain access to the exclusive club. The loan shark also dropped a bombshell. Officer Lee's death was connected to someone in Young Bin's circle. While Min Jae was still reeling from this revelation, Kang Yoon handed him a pair of video recording glasses. After telling him to improvise, confidently led him into the club. Their target was described as a criminal in his early 30s, roughly Min Jae's height, with a distinctive scar on his right arm. The plan was for Kang Yoon to keep Young Bin occupied at a gambling table while Min Jae searched for their suspect. After finalizing their strategy, they split up. Things didn't go smoothly. Young Bin clearly wasn't expecting Kang Yoon, leaving him awkwardly sidelined, waiting for an opportunity. Luckily, Chairman Kim left the gambling table, giving Kang Yoon a reluctant seat. Meanwhile, upstairs, Min Jae bumped into a chef. Spotting a clear scar on the chef's right arm, he immediately called Kang Yoon to report his find. He then blocked the staircase to prevent the suspect from escaping. Back downstairs, Kang Yoon ran into trouble. Young Bin, realizing Kang Yoon's ulterior motives, smashed his phone in a fit of rage. Min Jae was left to grapple with the suspect alone, and in the ensuing struggle, they both tumbled down the stairs. Seeing this, Kang Yoon jumped up to help Min Jae. After confirming the scar on the suspect's right arm, he quickly handcuffed him, intending to bring him to the police station for questioning. However, Young Bin's men intervened. "Touch me again, and I'll have you arrested for obstruction of justice," Kang Yoon warned. Young Bin, seemingly confident in his wealth and influence, simply waved them off, telling them to leave. Under interrogation, the suspect confessed readily. While he admitted to killing Officer Lee, he refused to implicate Young Bin. Kang Yoon was furious. It was clear Young Bin had orchestrated everything. With this small break in the case, In-ho met with Min Jae to get an update. Learning about Kang Yoon's sponsor didn't surprise In-ho. However, it shifted Min Jae's perspective on Kang Yoon. He now fully believed that Kang Yoon wasn't responsible for Officer Lee's death. Suspicions remained, but they needed more concrete evidence. As time went on, Min Jae became increasingly convinced that Kang Yoon was a good cop. While he appeared to be living lavishly off his sponsorship money, he was actually using every penny to investigate the case, even resorting to high-interest loans. Kang Yoon's only real possession was a submarine, which he was paying off in 20-year installments. He invited Min Jae out on the water to feel the salty sea breeze. He even confided his dream of becoming a fisherman after retirement. Hearing this, Min Jae silently made a decision. He would meticulously document Kang Yoon's activities, hoping to dispel In-ho's suspicions. During this moment of shared vulnerability, Kang Yoon suddenly brought up Min Jae's father. It turned out he had been Kang Yoon's mentor, guiding him into the police force. Kang Yoon had been at the scene the day Min Jae's father and a drug trafficker died. He acknowledged that Min Jae likely felt shame about his father's connection to the trafficker. To bridge the gap between them, Kang Yoon opened up about his painful past. His father had collapsed and died of a drug overdose in front of a police station. Ashamed, Kang Yoon hadn't claimed the body and had only arranged a quiet funeral days later. Min Jae's father, learning of this, had attended the funeral to pay his respects. "That's the kind of man your father was," Kang Yoon said. As Kang Yoon shared these stories, Min Jae recalled his childhood, remembering how he used to wear his father's police hat and get scolded for it. He now understood. His father knew the dangers of police work and was trying to protect him. After returning, Min Jae submitted his report on Kang Yoon to In-ho. Seeing the conclusion that Kang Yoon was clear of bribery and corruption charges, In-ho flew into a rage and immediately led a team to confront Kang Yoon. Unbeknownst to In-ho, Kang Yoon, while keeping the details hidden, had been arranging surveillance on Young Bin and the investors. It wasn't until In-ho's car forced them to stop that Kang Yoon realized Min Jae was the informant investigating him. Min Jae was equally confused. He'd filed his report, so why was In-ho acting like this? "I already filed my report, sir. There were no problems found. Whether there's a problem or not is for me to decide," In-ho retorted. In-ho's team stormed Kang Yoon's villa. He even brazenly ordered his men to drill open Kang Yoon's safe, only to find a few insignificant real estate contracts inside. Nothing that could be considered evidence. Having come up empty, In-ho lost his composure. Using dirty money to catch criminals, disregarding principles and the law. This is a disgrace to the honest officers working in the shadows. "You don't think this is justice, do you?" he raged. Kang Yoon understood. In-ho's relentless pursuit stemmed from his belief that Kang Yoon was responsible for the death of Officer Lee, his subordinate. Faced with such stubbornness, Kang Yoon saw no point in arguing. However, when higher-ups learned that In-ho had taken Kang Yoon in for questioning, they immediately ordered him to stop. Under pressure, In-ho, though seething with anger, had to release Kang Yoon. When the team discovered the informant within their ranks, they lured Min Jae, the one who betrayed Kang Yoon, to a small bar. They confiscated his phone and recording devices, pinned him down, and gave him a beating. Kang Yoon arrived just in time, but instead of holding a grudge, he extended an olive branch. "Listen," he said to Min Jae. "You're part of my team. We're on the same side." Kang Yoon was confident Min Jae would eventually join his side, and he was right. Min Jae confronted In Ho about his actions. In Ho, with a chilling laugh, revealed a shocking secret. Kang Yoon's father had been sent to prison by Min Jae's father, indirectly leading to Kang Yoon's mother's suicide. Guilt-ridden, Min Jae's father had taken Kang Yoon under his wing, mentoring him and showing him special attention. To drive the point home, In Ho produced a confidential file, the investigative report on Min Jae's father. It revealed that he had ties to the organization backing Kang Yoon. His contact within the organization was none other than Chief Jung Ho, the man they'd seen at the funeral. The Ion Nam organization was initially created to provide investigative funds for the police. Over time, it had devolved into a slush fund, fueling police extravagance and even bribery. Min Jae's father, according to the report, had been one of those corrupted. The countless needle marks on his abdomen were presented as further evidence. He had fallen from grace, colluding with drug traffickers, and, empowered by their vast resources, had sought to gain control. Min Jae now understood that In Ho had been using him to get to Kang Yoon. Still, he struggled to believe In Ho's claims about his father. To clear both his father's and Kang Yoon's names, he resolved to get to the bottom of it. Drowning his sorrows in alcohol, Min Jae suddenly received news. Kang Yoon had located one of Young Bin's henchmen. They rushed to the scene. The henchman, desperate for money, was involved in gambling, prostitution, and drugs, making him a close associate of Young Bin. Without a word, Kang Yoon and his team burst in, pinning the henchman to a surgical chair, demanding the location of Young Bin's secret meeting with investors. Kang Yoon, in a frenzy, wasn't afraid to resort to torture. As the drill whirred menacingly, Min Jae intervened, trying to stop Kang Yoon. But Kang Yoon showed no hesitation, making a brutal example of Min Jae in front of the terrified henchman. "If you interfere with my operation, you'll die by my hand. Understand?" he growled. The drill bit into Min Jae's brow bone. Seeing him writhing in pain, the henchman quickly gave up the location. Learning that Young Bin was hosting a product launch at a drug manufacturing plant in Bukgangan, they decided to use the henchman to infiltrate the event. Young Bin's new product was a mixture of coffee grounds and a colorless, odorless drug, designed to create a dual sensory high. Even seasoned addicts, it was said, couldn't resist it. Its release would undoubtedly cause societal chaos. Consequently, the entry fee to the launch was exorbitantly high. Desperate to bring Young Bin down, Kang Yoon declared he'd cover the 20 billion won entry fee. The henchman was stunned by Kang Yoon's audacity. But Kang Yoon's offer came with a condition. The henchman had to cooperate fully, helping them secure evidence against Young Bin. Unwilling to let his efforts go to waste, Kang Yoon decided to have Min Jae drive him to the organization's headquarters. He learned that Young Bin had dirt on Chairman Kim's son, and higher-ups, wary of the chairman's influence, were refusing to authorize an arrest warrant. Kang Yoon, however, was unrelenting. If they missed this opportunity, the new drug would flood the nation. Once it was distributed on a large scale, they'd have no chance of containing it. Chairman Kim was the organization's biggest sponsor. Antagonizing him was risky, and naturally, they were hesitant to go after Young Bin. With no other options, Kang Yoon resorted to borrowing from loan sharks again. Min Jae was astonished by his unwavering commitment to the case. Even loan sharks, pressured by the organization's influence, are refusing to lend money, Min Jae pointed out. But we can't let this opportunity slip, Kang Yoon countered. We police walk a fine line. As long as we have the people's support, we can operate in the gray areas. To ensure the plan went smoothly, Kang Yoon immediately sought help from Dong Cheol. Dong Cheol considered Young Bin his sworn enemy. Thrilled that Kang Yoon was finally making a move, he eagerly rubbed his hands together, eager to join the fight. He produced a bag overflowing with Korean won, offering it to Kang Yoon as entry money for the product launch. Anticipating the ensuing drama, Kang Yoon then deliberately had Min Jae deliver the money to Young Bin's subordinate. The subordinate, delighted by the unexpected windfall, was now unwittingly tied to their operation. Min Jae, now firmly in Kang Yoon's boat, could only offer a grim warning: guard that money carefully. If this fails, we all die. Despite the team's lingering prejudice against Min Jae, he had genuinely sided with Kang Yoon. The intermediary, clutching the money, hurried to meet Young Bin for the investment opportunity. Unsuspecting, Young Bin led him to the drug manufacturing plant. Kang Yoon and his team, following their location, lay in wait nearby. Inside, as everyone settled, Kang Yoon, unable to contain his excitement, began showcasing his product. A slow-turning will released steaming brown liquid, which flowed through pipes towards the designated outlet. Seeing his cue, the intermediary moved towards the window to signal Kang Yoon. But Young Bin, tipped off about the police presence, abruptly ordered the machinery shut down. He then tried to feign composure, assuring everyone the police have no warrant, no evidence, right? But his clumsy attempt at reassurance didn't fool Director Kim. As Director Kim led the exodus, panic rippled through the room. Amid the chaos, the henchmen managed to give the prearranged signal. Kang Yoon and his team, receiving the signal, launched their operation. The plant was swiftly surrounded and sealed. Min Jae spotted Director Kim fleeing and gave chase. Young Bin, regaining his composure, quickly realized the henchman was the informant. Just then, Kang Yoon and his team stormed the building. The investors found their escape routes blocked by police. Young Bin, smugly confident, pointed out that the drug production wasn't complete. Besides, Kang Yoon and his team didn't know the activation code for the machinery. He'd swallowed the only key containing the code, but he had clearly underestimated Kang Yoon's determination. Kang Yoon swiftly subdued Young Bin, retrieving the key without a scratch. Meanwhile, Min Jae, alone, had located Director Kim's hiding place. But predictably, things went south. "Kill him. He's seen my face. Stab him," Kim shrieked. Min Jae, forced to fend off Kim's bodyguard while preventing his escape, was outnumbered. During the struggle, Kim seized the opportunity and bolted. After subduing the bodyguard, Min Jae reached for his phone to update Kang Yoon, only to be stabbed by the bodyguard's hidden knife. Fortunately, Kang Yoon had successfully activated the machinery. With a decisive pull of the lever, the new drug, a coffee-like liquid with a strangely potent aroma, flowed forth. To confirm its composition, Kang Yoon even took a dramatic sip. Young Bin's guilt was now undeniable. Just as everyone thought the ordeal was over, Kang Yoon realized Min Jae was missing. A faint whistle from upstairs alerted him, and he raced up the stairs. Min Jae, barely escaping Kim's bodyguard, had stumbled out the door but was quickly caught. While everyone was focused on apprehending Young Bin, a subordinate had snuck away with the money. The organization, now viewing Kang Yoon as a loose cannon, decided he needed to be eliminated. He had not only attracted the attention of the supervisory committee, but also jeopardized their financial backing by taking down Chairman Kim. Take care of Kang Yoon, the order came down. Kang Yoon was now in a precarious position. Dong Cheol, learning that Kang Yoon had lost the 20 billion won loan, used this leverage to coerce him into drug trafficking. Min Jae, recovering in the hospital, made a new discovery. A visiting female officer provided a crucial clue. The suspect, Suk, whom they'd arrested earlier, hadn't had a scar on his arm a month prior. This meant he couldn't be Officer Lee's killer. Furthermore, the hospital confirmed Suk was terminally ill and had recently received a large sum of money. Min Jae was clueless as to who was pulling the strings. Ignoring his unhealed wounds, Min Jae checked himself out of the hospital. Arriving at Kang Yoon's apartment, he replayed the events of the past few days in his mind. He remembered the bodyguard who stabbed him also had a scar on his ear. A chilling realization dawned on him. "Chief, you killed Officer Lee," he accused Kang Yoon. "You were afraid of being exposed for instigating the murder, so you found a fake suspect and arrested him." Kang Yoon was speechless. His collusion with the organization was undeniable. He hadn't killed Officer Lee, but the officer had died as a consequence of his actions. His struggle to retrieve the incriminating recording device further solidified Min Jae's disillusionment. Min Jae was devastated by the truth he'd uncovered. "You've fallen into darkness," he said. "This time, the world won't be on your side." "Fine, I'm a devil," Kang Yoon admitted. "But I'll bring down devils worse than me." To prevent Kang Yoon from making another mistake, Min Jae resolved to stop him. Left with no other choice, Kang Yoon knocked Min Jae unconscious, stuffed him in the trunk, and went to repay his debt to Dong Cheol. He was selling himself out, becoming a drug runner. However, he'd alerted customs beforehand, ensuring the operation wouldn't succeed. But Kang Yoon underestimated Dong Cheol's paranoia. Dong Cheol saw Min Jae as a liability, a ticking time bomb. He had Min Jae and the car dumped into the ocean. Oblivious to Min Jae's importance to Kang Yoon, Dong Cheol admired his handiwork. "This is the West Sea. When the tide goes out tomorrow morning, they'll find the car," he said with satisfaction. Under intense pressure from Kang Yoon, Dong Cheol reluctantly ordered Min Jae's retrieval. Pulled from the water, Min Jae, learning of Kang Yoon's drug run, naively believed he could still convince him to turn back. But Kang Yoon was committed to his course. He handed Min Jae a gun for protection and boarded a small boat, heading to the prearranged drop-off point. Kang Yoon, on Dong Cheol's behalf, tested the purity of the flour, a code word for the drugs. The exchange began money for goods. Suddenly, Min Jae overpowered the other side's men. He charged up the stairs, heading straight for their headquarters. Kang Yoon, instantly understanding, joined him, taking down the traffickers, but they were outnumbered. After a fierce firefight, Kang Yoon was shot and fell. Min Jae, alone, was struggling to hold his own. Just as things looked bleak, the Coast Guard, alerted earlier, arrived, saving them both. It turned out that during Young Bin's arrest, Kang Yoon had set a trap, intentionally letting the subordinate escape with the money. His goal was to take down Kim Tae and the drug organization behind him. Min Jae finally understood Kang Yoon's plan and his foresight. Thankfully, Kang Yoon's wound was only a flesh wound to the arm. The stubborn In Ho, on charges of evidence fabrication, was determined to bring Kang Yoon down. This, however, was all part of the organization's scheme. They were using In Ho to eliminate Kang Yoon. Ironically, In Ho, driven by personal vendetta, had joined forces with the very organization he once despised. Tragically, Kang Yoon was stripped of his badge and imprisoned. Min Jae visited him regularly. Unlike the hypocritical In Ho, he admired Kang Yoon's brand of justice, operating in the gray areas. He now understood that the organization lurking in the shadows was responsible for Officer Lee's death. While Min Jae felt regret, Kang Yoon seemed content with the outcome, even contemplating a future as a fisherman after his release. A massive storm ravaged Kang Yoon's small yacht, leaving it in ruins. Meanwhile, Min Jae made a shocking discovery. The drug trafficker who killed his father years ago was none other than Kang Yoon's informant, a car mechanic. The long-buried secret was finally unearthed, bringing clarity to everything. Based on the mechanic's confession, Min Jae learned that his father's death had been orchestrated by the organization. Armed with this knowledge, Min Jae decided to use it against them. Fearing exposure, the organization's higher-ups finally agreed to meet with Min Jae. He presented them with the confession and crucial evidence. They couldn't deny the potential fallout if this information reached the media. Min Jae's rise has been meteoric. Astonishing. He's turned out even more ruthless than his father, one of them remarked. Min Jae's only demand was Kang Yoon's release from prison. Kang Yoon was surprised by Min Jae's boldness in confronting the organization head-on. On the day of Kang Yoon's release, Min Jae, sharply dressed in a suit, was there to greet him. "Aren't you a stickler for the rules?" Kang Yoon quipped. "I am," Min Jae replied, "but from now on, I'll be working to bring down devils worse than me, even if it means bending the rules." Their mission was far from over. They would continue to fight together, but this time, they would both be operating in the gray areas. The policeman's lineage explores the complex journey of officers navigating the blurry lines between right and wrong. It's not simply about police corruption or bad cops. It offers a nuanced perspective on the difficult choices officers face, the burdens they carry, and the paths they choose. Upholding strict justice even if it means letting murderers escape, or operating in the gray areas, using morally ambiguous methods to catch even bigger villains. Thanks for watching.